So we've touched upon the Astral Elves and how they came to be at the Astral Bazaar, as well as a brief amount of their history and what makes them who they are as a people. But what exactly is the Astral Bazaar? Welcome to the lore of Braunhaven. Today we're going to be touching on what exactly the Astral Bazaar is. So the Astral Bazaar was founded by the Astral Elves when they fled from the Shadow Realm, and they have a lot of similarities, of course, between the Astral Elves and the Shadow Elves, but there are some key differences with them, which we'll touch on in a bit. But they had no place of their own. And when they fled the Shadow Realm, they fled through the Veil, which is no small feat. And they went through the Veil and got to the edge of the Veil and found themselves in the Astral Sea, or the Astral Plane. And so, after hunting for who knows how long, originally I would like to think that they were searching for another plane of existence that would be suitable for them, such as another prime material plane, or even something that resembled the Fey realm, maybe perhaps Arcadia, although Arcadia is found in the Celestial Palace, and they would most certainly not be welcome there. But they searched throughout the Astral Sea, finally coming to rest upon the petrified corpse of a dead god. Nobody knows who this god was. He's been floating out in the Astral Sea for a while. And what happens to gods when they so-called die, if a god can die? This is one of the questions that the Astral Elves are asking themselves. But their bodies float out into the Astral Sea. And as they're out there, the clumps of matter, or even possibly shards of dreams, waves of emotion, the very essence of the river of time, all coalesce around the corpse of this dead god. And so they become encased and petrified inside these clumps of matter. And whatever happened to the body of this dead god, he was actually torn asunder in multiple pieces, and all of these pieces kind of stayed in orbit of one another and just gradually built into these islands that they sit on today. And so the Astral Elves came here, and they built basically they started as a city. They constructed their homes. There is some plant life on these floating asteroids of matter that are found within the astral plane, and they kind of built their homes and whatnot. And they quickly became to know that there are other species, other races, other beings that also not necessarily exist in, although some do exist in the astral sea, but there are other travelers of the astral sea. And they basically capitalized on this, and they became a nexus for many of these astral travelers to come to trade goods between the different planes of existence. And so the first part of the Astral Bazaar, and really whence it gets its name, is the market. And the market takes up more than half of the central portion of the Astral Bazaar. And all of these islands are connected by these rope bridges. So that travel across the Astral Bazaar is facilitated by these large rope bridges that connect these different floating islands out in the Astral Sea. And so the Astral Bazaar's market is the most I mean, dare I say, the most spectacular place that any of your characters from any of the prime material planes will see. It is loaded day and night. Not that there's really a day and night, but it's always packed with people. There are shops, kiosks, taverns, inns, ale houses. Uh, there are theaters. There are dance halls. There are numerous anything that you can imagine is in this market, and it is filled with people, goods, and supplies from all across all of the planes of existence. Now, naturally, there are certain species or races that aren't particularly welcome. Mind Ravagers immediately comes to mind. Um, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. Some of them skulk along in the shadows. So if you are in the market at the Astral Bazaar, you should always uh, be very careful. But almost anything that your characters could ever possibly want to purchase, including magic items, can probably be found at the Astral Bazaar's market. Now, that's not to say that they're going to be purchased at a suitable price for your characters. So money on the in the Astral Bazaar, they have their own currency, and it is called the Astral Coin. And the Astral Coin is actually minted by the Astral Elves somewhere in High Court. Um, it is minted by them. It is a complex alloy consisting of astral iron, platinum, gold, and silver. And these coins, it roughly equates to 2 gold pieces to 1 astral coin. And there are throughout the market there are plenty of money changers. You can go and trade in your gold coins for a certain amount of astral coins. Gold pieces and normal currency are they're not necessarily shunned outright, but you're not going to get as far spending those coins in the market or really anywhere. They usually accept the currency of the astral coin. Something to note is that astral coins are worth far more than the 2 gold piece value on the prime material plane because part of that alloy, if you find a decent alchemist, they're going to be able to separate that metal out. And astral iron is highly valuable to any of the wizards or illusionists or magic user classes. For a number of experimental reasons, even said alchemists may be willing to pay you in order to separate that alloy or that astral iron from the alloy of the coin. So you could probably set a price for however much you want on the prime material plane to sell these coins to those that are interested. And now that is to say that not everybody knows about astral coins, but they are going to those that do are going to be willing to pay a hefty sum even for 1 or 2 of these coins. So the astral coin is worth far more than what you're going to pay at the exchange rate on the or in the market. Now, along with the market, you of course you have the residential area, and this is where the bulk of the people that live on the Astral Bazaar, that's where they usually live. It also includes a slum area for those that have fallen on hard times. I mean, merchants can sometimes see their fortunes rise, and sometimes they see them fade away, and so they may end up in the slum area, and that is usually located in an area in the center of the main island that is called the Spine, and it's called the Spine because there was what they refer to as a godquake. It's basically an earthquake that happens upon the corpse of a dead god that caused a large bone protrusion that resembles a spine to erupt from the ground and it destroyed many of the buildings. Most of those buildings there are plans to rebuild, but um, it is what it is for now, and it doesn't seem like the spine is going to be going away, and it is now a permanent feature of the Astral Bazaar. And at the northeastern end, not that there are compass directions in the Astral Sea, but you get my drift. Up and to the right, there is at the tail of this spine is an opening, a cave, and there have been reports that creatures have been coming out of the cave and that people have disappeared. Queen Kinidos of the Astral Elves has hired three different adventuring parties. She hired them through a company called the Greenwater Mercantile and Adventuring Company, which has a franchise here in the Astral Bazaar in the residential district. All three of those adventuring parties never came back. This kind of caused there to be a souring of the relationship between the High Court and Greenwater. And we have touched upon Greenwater. They are an Easter egg that are found in almost, or not all, but many of the Braunhaven campaign books, but they've never really been detailed, and that is going to be coming soon. There will be a source book on the history of Greenwater Mercantile and Adventuring Company, who they are, what they've done, but they have an extensive history in the Braunhaven campaign setting that really has not been told as far as what their story is and who they are, or how they became so wealthy and powerful as it is. Now, all of this really begs the question of why did the Astral Elves do all this? What are they doing? What are they seeking? And that the why they are here is simply because they had nowhere else to go. They for since time means nothing in the Astral Sea, who knows how long they went searching for a new home. But the reality is, they were probably pretty tired of searching the astral plane, and this is where they came to rest. What are they doing? Well, they have an existential problem. So when the Shadow Elves split off and went with the god Octus to the Shadow Plane, they effectively cut themselves off from their creator god, and that would be the old god Sylvanus. He's the one who created all of the elves, and he created them on the or in the Fey realm. And they, if you remember the history, they immigrated during the cataclysmic reckoning to the prime material plane of the known world, and possibly other prime material planes. Hint. But when the Shadow Elves split off, they cut themselves off from pretty much everything that made them elvish. They no longer were able, in the Shadow Realm, they no longer were able to enjoy any kind of immortality, having their souls be reincarnated into the body of a new elf on the Fey Realm. They were unable to enjoy pretty much any of that. Instead, while they were on the Shadow Plane, Octus granted them a form of immortality in that they were reincarnated immediately on the Shadow Plane or on the Shadow Realm, but they weren't a new soul. They were an old soul, and they just stepped out of the mist in yet a new body that was the same as the old body, and they kept all of their memories for eons. And so this leads to a very dismal existence, a depressing existence. There's nothing new for them. There is nothing but past mistakes, old regrets. It all compounds on the very soul of the Shadow Elf, and this is what led them to leave yet again. When the Astral Elves split off from the Shadow Elves and went into the Astral Sea, This cut them off from Octus as well. And so they are essentially a godless people. They have absolutely no form of immortality. They have long lives. They live as long as any other elf. The problem is that they do not reincarnate. They do not reestablish themselves back on the Fey realm. They don't even get reincarnated on the Shadow realm. When they die, it is a final death. Their soul is cast out into the astral sea for eternity. And so the astral elves are actually seeking a cure to this existential curse. They are trying to rekindle or reestablish their connection with the old god Sylvanus. And part of this is up to the northeast is the ecclesiastic district. Now, in the ecclesiastic district, they have clerics and druids and acolytes, even some paladins, from all across the plains, and they all come here with their own religion, their own oaths, their own beliefs, but their purpose here is really to find a connection between all of divinity, and they are studying what is divinity. How does this work? How can we reestablish a connection to the gods when we have been cast out? And to that aim, they have created the Theological Hall, which is probably the largest building in the ecclesiastic district. And despite it being a church, the reality is that it is really more of a library and a repository of knowledge. And it is centered around the tree of Ig, which is grown from the seeds of a tree that some believe to be the tree of life that is found in the Shadow Realm. Or, I'm sorry, not the Shadow Realm, the Fey Realm. And this tree was planted in soil and in a large pool in the center of the Theological Hall, and its boughs have grown up through an opening into the second floor. And part of this, as well as the tree itself, there are a number of dragonflies and species of butterflies that have nested in the tree, and it seems to forever emanate around this pool a cloudy mist. And it only clings to the tree. And the Astral Elves really believe that this having this here, it's more than just symbolic, in that they want to reestablish their connection with the Fey realm. It is part of their identity. It is a part of their divinity, and the tree itself they have come to worship or to venerate. They believe that it is distinctly tied or directly tied to the old god Sylvanus. Now, the old Sylvanus being an old god, they're rather aloof. He may or may not even recognize the existence of the Astral Elves. The old gods rarely gave any attention to mortals or to their own creations. Other than to sometimes mess with them. They seem to play with them and cause them strife for almost no reason. Sylvanus wasn't the worst offender of the old gods, but if you're praying to the old gods and expecting your prayers to be answered or expecting a reply, you're probably going to be waiting a very long time, if ever. And so they created a Theological Hall, and it's the ground floor has a 20-foot tall ceiling that is lined with bookshelves and study table areas. And there are ladders at various points so that you can climb up and retrieve texts from the top shelf. And it has a lecture hall and a private study area, and there are numerous books, mostly, of course, of a religious bent, but there are philosophical texts that attempt not necessarily to answer the question, but to give insight into what divinity truly is. On the second floor, they have an extension of these texts, as well as a number of storerooms for artifacts and scrolls or textbooks that have not been studied yet. And they have a couple of shrines, one to the dedicated on the northeastern side to the old god Sylvanus, and on the southeastern side they have a gnomish shrine that is dedicated to the demigod Durham Bronzehumer. And Durham Bronzehumer is worshipped by both gnomes and dwarves, although the question, of course, is who came first, gnomes or the dwarves? The answer to that is they probably came about around the same time. But the difference between gnomes and dwarves, they are very similar. They are cousins of one another, but the gnomes are definitely from the Fey realm. Yet they both races worship this demigod. He is a god of luck. And so the dwarves see him as allowing them. They'll offer a prayer to Durham Bronzehumer in order to get luck in mining or finding new veins of ore. The gnomes will pray to him as they are searching for gems. They love gems. Or sometimes when they are tinkering, gnomes are well known for creating gearworks items, and so they will throw a little prayer to Durham Bronzehumer to whisper life into their creation. In the basement, the undercroft of Theological Hall are the bodies of the original 10 founders of the Astral Bazaar. And these corpses are kept here in reverence, and the entire undercroft is surrounded with stone shelves that contain hundreds, maybe thousands, of scrolls. And in many of these scrolls that are found in the undercroft, nobody truly knows what they are. They are written in a runic language that few understand. They are starting to perhaps have a breakthrough on what this is. These are scrolls made on bronze or copper sheets, and they are carefully rolled up and placed into stone scroll holders that are stacked in these. And this is actually how many of these were found. And they have this runic language written on them. And there are theories that these scrolls actually detail the actual language of creation, the language used by the gods in order to bring the planes or even the creatures, those that live there, into actual existence. And it is believed that these scrolls may have that ability and that power. And there are some textbooks in the library above that kind of detail some of that information. But the Astral Elves, and especially those of the ecclesiastic district, keep these under very tight control, because if it is what they think that it is, it's not a power that they want getting out into the larger world. Now, some of these scrolls have been studied, and it has been realized that these runes are very similar to that of the runes that are used by some of the giants in the known world. And this is true. Giants are one of the last mortal species that has access, direct and frequent use of runic magic. They don't have a full control of it, but they are well known. If you are battling a giant, you may find them wielding a weapon that is enchanted with runic magic, and this is made by the rune marks of the giant species, usually found in Stagina, or to the very cold frozen north, or in some of the mountainous regions, such as the Skellis Mountains. So there is a lot of study going on, and the scholars of Theological Hall are starting to believe that perhaps this connection between runic magic and the old gods Sylvanas, there may be enough of a connection there that they can perhaps negotiate a way to reconnect the astral elves to divinity and allow them to regain their immortality. Whether or not this is possible, nobody knows. The very act of knowing and mastering runic magic could potentially allow the astral elves to force their way, force the hand of Sylvanas into giving them back. And I don't believe that that's something that the astral elves really would want. I think that they're going to have to be very careful with that. But they're still in the very infant stages of studying this magic. So that is really what the Astral Elves are seeking, and a little bit of knowledge about the Astral Bazaar and how they got there and what they're doing. Next time we'll take a closer look at Greenwater Mercantile and the High Court, and who is Queen Canidas and how are the Astral Elves ruled. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.